What's happening? Hey, Andy here. That's right, I'm back. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I'm actually going to start a new series. I'm going to be doing these, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 times a week, depending how much information I want to put out there. These are going to be good. A lot of it's just kind of talking, things that are near to dear to my heart, and tie it into business a lot of times, tie it into what we're doing, tie it into, a lot of generic kind of things. But before I get started, because I know people aren't on yet, I always grab something that I have laying around. I got about 1 billion things in this room. This is one of my latest things I'm really getting into. If you can see this. This is actually a 19th century, I guess they call it a sai. It's like the Grim Reaper. Okay, this is 19th century. When I bought this, it was actually covered in rust. If you can see it, let me get a little closer. And it's not covered in any rust anymore. You can see all the metal on it. It's kind of cool. It's a process. You put it in vinegar, and I sat it in there for about 24 hours, and you pull it out. It's got a little bit of a wool pad. Man, this stuff just came right off, and you can see right down to the metal. So you can actually see the original tool, which is kind of cool. And if you look around here, well, you can't see it. I'll show you my camera sometime, but I've got a lot of different 19th century tools. With this one, I'm actually making the history of tobacco. Actually, the history of cigars. So I have a lot of tools that were used, in cutting tobacco that were made for cigars or for probably even cigarettes. But a lot of these are all tobacco related. They're all related specifically to cigars. I'm going to make a huge, if you follow me at all, I make huge shadow boxes. This is going to be one of my masterpieces. It's going to be about, the whole thing's probably going to be about 7 feet tall, about 6 feet wide. It's going to have shelves. It's going to have a big, huge, giant box with all these different tools displayed. And that's what I'm into, because you need to get into different stuff. Anyways, what's happening? Anybody on? Hey Miguel, what's happening? Today what I really want to talk about, I know it's been a week, but I want to talk about, 9/11 and really anything good that came out of that, because I know people that didn't make it that day, and it was a very traumatic day, and to think that it was 16 years ago, as the years go by, nearly an entire generation has lived in the aftermath of 9/11 in 16 years. I mean, my son is 17 years old. He doesn't remember anything before 9/11. I mean, even if you're 20, 21 years old, you probably don't remember the world before the Twin Towers were attacked, September 11th, 2001. You don't remember the world before that. And it was a very different world. It was a more innocent world. I think we went the 80s and 90s. They were a very innocent time. I don't think a lot of us knew what was going on behind the scenes until we got attacked, which is good. We don't need to know everything. But 20 years, an entire generation. That's all they remember. But there's some good things that came out of that. And I want to get into that in a minute. But I can't help reflect, the events of that day and what they meant to me. Even with all the drama that surrounded the event and the horror of that day, of turning the television set on, it depends on where you were. I'll get into where I was that day someday, but not today. I was pretty close. Even after the war it created and still continues today, there's still some good, positive things that came out of this. Even after all the masterminds that were involved in that event, Osama bin Laden, most of his henchmen, a lot of his lieutenants, most of the organization that he originally had, most of those are gone. It's like a million-headed snake. A lot of them have been chopped off and new ones have come. That's why we're at war still. But, even after all of that, even after all the new security restrictions that we have, I mean, if you think about it, we used to go to the airport, you could walk in, you just basically walked on your plane. You walked in the airport, you got your ticket, and you walked on the plane. There was none of this, having to strip down to your skivvies, getting patted down like you're going to see somebody in death row. I mean, there was none of that. I guess that it's good that we have that now. We needed some of it, but I think it's a little bit overboard. But the world has definitely changed because of it. We've definitely become less innocent as a result of 9/11. But anyways, even after all the conspiracy theories and after all these theories have been dissected and analyzed, I mean, you hear every year when you have the anniversary of 9/11, you have a new conspiracy theory. Some of them, hey, I'm always open to new theories. I'm always open to new possibilities. What's the latest one I heard? That these planes were actually holograms that crashed into these, and that they were taken down like with dynamite and stuff. I mean, let me put it this way. I knew people that died on that plane. They weren't holograms. I mean, holograms, I was really going, F you. They were not holograms. These were planes that crashed into the building. They were. That's all there is. They were planes that crashed into the building. There's nothing you can fake there. Now, if other things happen, that's a possibility, but I'll move on with that. There's lots of conspiracy theories. Even after that, even after all the stories of firemen heroes and civilian unselfishness, how many thousands of firemen died that day? Just unbelievable. It's shocking. Entire families, that sons and fathers and sons and uncles and cousins. Some of these people were all in the same. They're all in the same fire group. What do you call it? The same squad. Entire families were wiped out that day. Something like 2,500 firemen gone. And some of them survived. It's always nice to hear about the stories of survival. A lot of civilians just jumped in and started helping, whether they were supposed to or not. Think about all the stories, of all those things that occurred. Even after all the victims and the families. I mean, how many people died that day? I personally knew two. I didn't know the people. I knew their spouses. I grew up with their spouses. One was a good friend of mine. His wife died on the plane that crashed in the first building, and then I knew the wife of a chef who worked on Windows of the World. He was a chef up on the top, really way up there, like 109th floor, I think it was. He didn't make it. So those are the two people that I actually had some connection with. But but even after all of that, even after all this craziness, and we'll talk about it probably for the next 100 years, but I still remember and relish that short time in American history when we came together as a nation like no other time in my life. And what I mean is, it didn't matter for a period. It was like a month or two. Even after 6 months, it kind of dissolved a little bit, but there was a real feeling. You could drive down the road, you'd see 100 American flags, and everybody was kind to each other. They respected each other. They were courteous to each other. It was almost like it was Christmas, and everybody was just kind of in a different. We'd all experienced the same shock, the same trauma. I think something like the crime rate in major cities was down by 80%. Everybody was pretty traumatized. It was culturally, it was just one of the most incredible things I've ever been through. It didn't matter what religion you were, what race you were, what color, what political affiliation, what your social status was. We were all red, white, and blue. And that lasted for a good period of time. And I've always dissected it because I've never felt like that before, or prior to that, or after that. After that period of, I'd say, a month to maybe 6 months, it dissipated a little bit after that. I think one of the big reasons why we don't come together like that, and we're so divided now, is because we all had one thing to focus on. There was no one to divide us. There was only something to bring us together. And I like to call it the Pearl Harbor of my generation. I can imagine what that must have been like when we were attacked December 7th, 1941. But then we had to prepare for a serious war, a lot bigger than the one after 9/11. But I'm sure it was a feeling just like that, when everyone came together as one country. And I wish we could do that again. I wish we could see past all the division that's going on today. Never mind the political affiliations. I don't get into that stuff, but I wish we could get beyond that. I really do. I wish we could get beyond, the racial, political, economic differences, and I wish we could come together as a nation. Somebody needs to bring us all, together. Somebody. I think the only person that can do that is you and me. So it starts with me. I'm certainly going to throw my hat in the ring and try to bring people together and find the positive in things, find the creative in things, and not bitch about things. That's, nobody cares, really. If you don't have your president or your Congress or whatever, all you can control is you. That's all you can control. And your only adversary is you. At the end of the day, your only adversary is you. And that's all that matters. So be in competition with yourself. Don't be in competition with everybody else. Just be in competition with you. Be a better person every day. Do more than you did the day before, and grow on it. Take chances. You got to take chances every day. If you don't take chances, then you're not growing. It's that simple. And it all ties into finding the good in even something as horrible as 9/11. Other than that, I'm going to be around almost every day. I'm going to try to be around a lot. I got my new nose picker, actually. It's pretty cool. Someday when I get this thing all finished, I'll probably, I don't know, maybe a couple months, I'll get it all finished and I'll do a video on it. It'll be really cool. For those of you guys who are into cigars and tobacco and stuff, you're going to love this stuff, man. You're going to love it. Anyways, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you real soon. Out.